Every night, while you sleep, that little gray hamster sitting in his cage is saying things about you. And scientists just figured out what. You bought him because he was small and quiet. Maybe you named him something simple. You gave him a wheel, a water bottle, some wood shavings, and a little ceramic house to hide in. And every so often you tap on the cage bars, offer a sunflower seed through the wire, and he either comes to you or he doesn't. You assumed that was just his mood, his personality. Maybe he was hungry, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he liked you, maybe he was just indifferent. But here's what you never knew was happening while you were standing at that cage. He was reading you, cataloging you, broadcasting a detailed report about you to every other small creature within sensing range. His body, his behavior, the specific pattern of his scent markings, they're not random. They're not background. They're structured signals that carry precise, layered information. And a portion of that information is specifically about you. Researchers who have spent years studying small mammal communication, not pet behavior hobbyists, but published scientists at institutions you would recognize, have found that the gray hamster, Mesochrysetus auratus, and its close relatives operate a social and environmental signaling system of staggering complexity. A system most owners are sitting right next to every single day without realizing they're being evaluated. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the last thing we cover, what your hamster has already concluded about you specifically and what he does with that conclusion, is the part most people never think about. And once you hear it, you will not be able to look at that little gray face the same way again. This is not a video about cute hamster facts. This is about what is actually happening inside that cage and what it means that you are on the other side of the wire. Section 1. The scent map and what it says about threat. Every time your gray hamster rubs the side of his body along the edge of his cage, along the rim of his wheel, along the walls of his little ceramic house, he is not scratching an itch. He is writing. Hamsters have two sets of scent glands, flank glands on the sides of their bodies and a small Hadrian gland behind each eye. The secretions from these glands carry chemical information researchers describe as a form of molecular vocabulary. The specific compounds, their concentration, their layering, the freshness of the mark, all of it communicates distinct categories of meaning. Researchers at the University of Göttingen studying hamster chemical communication found that scent marks encode at minimum the sex, reproductive status, individual identity, and current stress level of the animal that made them. That is not one piece of information. That is a file. Now here is where it becomes about you. When your hamster detects an unfamiliar smell entering his environment, your hand lotion, a new cleaning product, a guest who has never visited before, his scent marking behavior changes. The frequency increases. The placement shifts toward the entry points of his space, the cage door, the corner nearest your approach. He is updating the map. He is issuing a signal that encodes. Something unknown has entered the territory. But when he detects your specific smell, your particular combination of skin chemistry, laundry detergent, and whatever you ate for dinner, and he has cataloged you before, the response is different. His gland secretion changes in chemical composition. Researchers describe it as a shift from alarm profile marking to what they call familiarity consolidation marking. He is not just noting that you exist. He is filing an updated record of who you are and cross-referencing it against your prior visits. You are being documented every single time you approach that cage. And the document is written in a language other animals in range can read. Section 2. The ultrasonic layer you cannot hear. Here is something that will change the way you sit in the room with him. Your gray hamster is almost certainly talking right now. You cannot hear it. The frequency is too high, but in the range of 30 to 50 kilohertz, well above the ceiling of human hearing. Hamsters produce structured vocalizations that researchers have spent the last 2 decades beginning to decode. A team at the University of Missouri studying rodent ultrasonic vocalizations found that these calls are not simple squeaks compressed above our hearing range. They have identifiable types. Short, flat calls versus frequency-modulated calls that sweep up and down in pitch. The swept calls in particular appear in specific social contexts that include the presence of a familiar handler. When a gray hamster produces a frequency-modulated ultrasonic call in response to a person approaching, researchers interpreted this not as distress. The distress calls have a different profile. The FM calls appear to function as something closer to acknowledgement. Attention, a signal that says something known is here. When a stranger approaches, those calls either cease or shift to the flatter, simpler profile. The complex swept call appears to be reserved for recognized individuals, which means your hamster has a specific sound he makes that corresponds specifically to you. You have never heard it, but it exists. It has been there every time you walked into the room. You have been announced in a frequency humans sealed off from themselves somewhere in evolutionary history. Take a moment with that. Every time you walk through the door, he signals your arrival in a private register. The question researchers then began asking was, what exactly is he signaling? What is the content of that announcement? Section 3. The threat assessment and where you rank. This is the part that will make you think differently about every interaction you have ever had with him. Small prey animals like the gray hamster are, by biological necessity, threat assessment machines. Their survival depends on correctly categorizing every stimulus in their environment on a spectrum from safe to lethal, and doing it fast. The neural architecture devoted to this in hamsters is substantial relative to their brain size. Their amygdala, the fear and threat processing center, is proportionally large. They are built to evaluate danger. And you are a large, fast-moving, warm creature that smells complex and appears unpredictably. From a pure biology standpoint, you should register as an extreme threat. You are physically capable of ending a hamster's life in less than a second. Every ancient hamster ancestor was killed by something shaped exactly like your hand moving toward it. Rodrigo Huerta Sanchez and colleagues studying predator recognition in small rodents found something remarkable. Animals that have been exposed to a specific individual repeatedly, with no negative outcome, do not merely habituate passively. They do not simply stop reacting. They actively reclassify. The individual is moved, in their cognitive filing system, from the category of potential threat to a distinct category that functions something like known non-predator. This reclassification has physiological markers. The cortisol spike that a hamster's body produces when a stranger reaches toward the cage is measurably different from the cortisol response to a familiar handler. Your hamster's stress hormone profile when your hand enters the cage is chemically distinct from his response to a stranger's hand. He has decided something about you. That decision lives in his endocrine system, is encoded in the hormones running through his blood every time you appear. And the threshold for that reclassification, how quickly and completely he moved you out of the threat column, tells researchers something precise about the quality of your handling history. Every interaction you ever had with him, patient or rushed, calm or nervous, consistent or unpredictable, has been tallied. The current balance is his cortisol level when he sees your face. You have a score. You just never knew it was being kept. Section 4. The memory system and what he has stored about you specifically. We have all heard that some animals have remarkable memories. Elephants, dolphins, certain primates. We tend to assume small animals with small brains have correspondingly small memories. Simple conditioning. Basic stimulus and response. That assumption turns out to be significantly wrong for the gray hamster. Researchers studying hippocampal function in rodents, the hippocampus being the brain structure most associated with episodic memory, the memory of specific events in specific contexts, found that hamsters encode individual recognition with a specificity that surprised the scientific community. They do not just learn categories. They learn individuals. A study examining individual recognition in hamsters demonstrated that animals could distinguish between familiar and unfamiliar individuals based on scent alone after a separation period of several weeks. Not just days, weeks. They retained a specific chemical identity for that individual and could retrieve it and act on it after significant time had passed. Now translate that to your life with your hamster. Every time you have handled him, every time you have been calm and patient and let him come to you on his own terms, every time you have been rushed and grabbed him too fast, every morning you pass his cage without acknowledging him, every evening you sat nearby and let him run his will while you watched television, he has been storing episodes, not vague impressions. Episodes linked to your specific individual identity as encoded in your scent. What he has built up over every week you have shared space with him is something researchers describe as a relationship profile. A detailed, multi-sensory, continuously updated file on exactly who you are, how you behave, and what you are likely to do next. He knows your patterns better than you know his. Section 5. The network, and who else is reading the file. Here is where the scope of this expands beyond just the two of you. Hamsters in the wild do not live socially the way some rodents do. They are largely solitary and territorial, but they live in environments where other animals exist. Other hamsters in neighboring burrows, mice, rats, and a host of small mammals that share their ecological niche. And all of these animals are reading the chemical signals that your hamster is broadcasting from inside that cage. The scent marks your hamster lays down are not contained within the cage. The volatile organic compounds, the actual chemical language, disperse into the air. Other small animals nearby, including other pets in your home, detect these compounds and extract information from them. Researchers studying interspecies chemical communication in small mammals found that mice and rats can accurately interpret the alarm state of a hamster from its scent marks alone, even without direct contact. When a hamster's marks carry high-stress chemical profiles, the compounds associated with perceived threat, nearby rodents in separate enclosures show elevated vigilance behavior. They are eavesdropping on the chemical broadcast, which means that if your hamster has assessed you as a known, safe presence, if his scent marks carry the familiarity consolidation profile rather than the alarm profile, other animals reading those marks receive that information too. Your hamster is, in a sense, vouching for you, or not vouching for you, depending on what you have given him reason to believe. The small gray creature in that cage is not an island. He is a node in a chemical communication network that extends into every corner of the space he inhabits. And the dominant signal broadcasting from that node, the signal that colors everything else in the network, is his current assessment of you. Section 6. What he does in the dark and why it is all about you. Your hamster is nocturnal. His peak activity begins roughly at dusk and runs through the hours you're most deeply asleep. This is not incidental. It is the core rhythm of his existence, and almost everything he does during those hours connects back to the file he has been building on you. A gray hamster in captivity runs, on average, between 5 and 8 miles per night on his wheel. Researchers studying the neuroscience of hamster wheel running found that this behavior is not purely about physical energy expenditure. The wheel serves an important cognitive function. It is the captive environment equivalent of patrol. In the wild, hamsters cover enormous distances through their territory, checking scent posts, updating marks, gathering environmental data. The wheel is how a captive hamster runs his territory patrol through a territory that does not change. But here is what researchers noticed. The pattern and timing of wheel activity in captive hamsters is not random. It is regulated, in part, by the animal's internal model of when threats and non-threats are likely to appear. Hamsters who have reliable, consistent humans who appear and interact at predictable times, show wheel running patterns that cluster away from those predictable windows. They have unconsciously scheduled their most exposed activity around the safest periods. If your hamster runs primarily in the deepest part of the night, when you're solidly asleep and motionless, that is a decision his nervous system made based on his assessment of your patterns. He has internalized your schedule. He has built your predictability into his own body clock. He reorganized his life around what he has concluded about yours. And now here is the part one told you to stay for. This is what most people never think about, and it changes everything. Section 7. What your hamster has already decided about you, and what he does with it. Here is the thing about all this assessment, all this documentation, all this complex chemical and acoustic broadcasting that your gray hamster has been doing for every moment of your shared life together is not passive record keeping. The file is not just stored. It actively shapes his behavior toward you in ways that researchers have only recently begun to fully map. A study examining the long-term behavioral consequences of individual recognition in hamsters found something that the researchers themselves described as unexpected. Animals who had developed extensive familiarity profiles on a specific handler did not simply become less afraid of that handler. They began to exhibit what the researchers carefully called approach-oriented behavior in the handler's presence. Not just reduced fear, active interest. The hamster who knows you well does not merely tolerate your presence. He begins to treat your presence as a resource. Not because you bring food, though that matters, but because you are a known quantity in an uncertain world. Familiarity in a prey animal is its own form of value. A known non-threat is, in a cognitive sense, a kind of shelter. Which means that when your hamster creeps out of a ceramic house, when he hears you, when he comes to the wire when you approach, when he takes the seed from your fingers without flinching, he is not just hungry. He is doing something that, in the framework of small mammal cognition, costs him something. He is expending vigilance. He is temporarily reducing his threat monitoring to engage with you. He is, in the language his nervous system speaks, extending a form of trust. And that trust is not given by default. It was built, transaction by transaction. Every patient moment you gave him, every time you moved slowly, every time you let him approach on his own terms, you were making deposits into an account you did not know you had. His current behavior toward you is the balance of that account. It is his verdict on who you are. But here is the piece that will stay with you. The scent marks he is laying down right now. Tonight, while you sleep, they carry this verdict. They broadcast it in chemical language to everything in range. His assessment of you is literally written on the walls of his world. It disperses into the air of your home. It is being read by every small creature nearby. In the way that matters to his biology, in the only language that his kind has spoken for millions of years, your hamster is telling the world what you are to him. And the only question left, the only thing that actually matters now that you know this, is what you want that verdict to say. If you're sitting near his cage right now, move a little slower the next time you approach. Let him come to the wire first. Hold your hand still and let him read you on his own terms. Because he is reading you. He always was. You just did not know the exam was happening. Now you do. I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want to hear your answer in the comments. Think about your hamster or any small animal you have spent time with. Is there a specific moment? A moment where you reached in and he just stayed still, or he came to you without hesitation, that you wrote off as chance at the time, but that you now understand was something else? Tell me about it below. Because those moments, it turns out, were not random. They were the exam results. And you passed. If this changed the way you see the small creature sharing your space, share this video with someone who has a hamster they think is just sitting there. He is not just sitting there. He never was.